What if the last memory of your sister was seeing her in a white coffin, with one eye slightly open, and the world thought you killed her? For nearly 3 decades, the chilling death of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey has haunted America. A beautiful child pageant queen found murdered in her own home, and to this day, no one truly knows what happened. But now, after 28 long years of silence, her brother Burke Ramsey has finally broken his silence, revealing disturbing details never heard before. Details that could flip the entire narrative upside down. This isn't just a cold case, this is a family destroyed, a mystery buried under suspicion, grief, and one horrifying Christmas night. It was the morning of December 20. Boulder, Colorado was still wrapped in the quiet magic of Christmas. Snow lightly coated the rooftops, the Ramsey household sparkled with decorations, and presents still lay opened beneath the tree. But in the Ramsey home, joy had vanished. 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey, vibrant golden-haired, full of life, was missing. Her bed was untouched, her room eerily silent. Then her mother, Patsy, saw it. A handwritten ransom note sprawled across the staircase, 3 pages long, demanding exactly $118,000, the precise amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus. Coincidence? Impossible. In panic, Patsy called night. Her voice trembled with fear, a mother's desperation bleeding through the line. Within minutes, police arrived, but so did chaos. Friends, neighbors, even family friends were allowed inside. People moved through rooms, touched objects, disturbed evidence. The house, a crime scene, was already compromised. Then a detective suggested John search the house, and that's when it happened. John Ramsey went into the basement and found his little girl, wrapped in a white blanket, lifeless, cold, her tiny body brutally beaten and strangled, and in a moment of unbearable grief, he carried her upstairs in his arms, screaming into the air. But even that was later questioned. Why did he move the body? Why touch the scene? Investigators said he contaminated crucial evidence, but John was just a father holding his dead daughter. Burke Ramsey was only 9 years old at the time. The night before, JonBenet was playing, laughing, eating pineapple. The next morning she was gone. I remember my dad coming to me and saying, "JonBenet is in heaven now," Burke recalls. Then he started crying, and then I started crying. But what followed wasn't just grief, it was suspicion. Whispers started to spread. What if Burke did it? People asked, why didn't he hear anything that night? Why did he stay in bed, and why did he smile during interviews? His smile, awkward, out of place, became a focal point. But experts said it wasn't guilt, it was anxiety. A child's reflex to unimaginable pressure, media scrutiny, and bottled-up trauma. Burke, now in his late 30s, finally addressed the accusations head-on in an emotional interview with Dr. Phil. "Absolutely not," he said, when asked if he had anything to do with his sister's death. His voice steady, but cracked with old wounds. He said he trusted his parents. He was just a frightened 9-year-old trying to survive the trauma. But the tragedy didn't just take his sister, it stole his peace, his childhood, and the chance to grieve in private. But who was JonBenet? Why did the world fall in love with her? Born on August 6, 1990, in Atlanta, Georgia, JonBenet was named after both her parents, JonBenet and Patricia Ramsey, a perfect blend of charm and innocence. Patsy, a former beauty queen herself, Miss West Virginia, 1977, introduced JonBenet to pageants early on. With her sparkling blue eyes, golden curls, and megawatt smile, JonBenet became a pageant star. She won titles like Little Miss Colorado and National Tiny Miss Beauty. Her photos, dressed in glittering gowns and heavy makeup, lit up tabloids and TV screens. But beyond the stage, she was just a sweet little girl. A kindergartner at High Peaks Elementary School. Beloved by teachers, adored by friends. At home, she was the light of her family's life. They lived in a grand 15-room mansion in Boulder. They had a second home in Michigan. They had money. They had fame. And maybe that made them a target. The ransom note, bizarre in every way, was written using a pen and pad from inside the house. It demanded $118,000, again the exact amount of John's bonus. The letter was long, filled with dramatic movie references, almost like a screenplay. Who writes a 3-page ransom note during a kidnapping, and why were there no signs of forced entry? All doors and windows were intact. Nothing was stolen, nothing was out of place, except for a murdered child. A flashlight was found in the kitchen, possibly the murder weapon. A paintbrush from Patsy's art kit had been used to craft the garrote. The strangling device. There were even marks on JonBenet's body that looked like they came from a stun gun. But if no one broke in, who did this? That's when the suspicion turned inward. The media pounced. The police, desperate for answers, focused on the Ramsey. Some said Patsy was obsessed with JonBenet's pageants. Others accused her of staging a fake kidnapping to cover an accident. Burke became the target of internet theories. John was portrayed as cold and calculated, but there was no real evidence, no confession, no DNA match, no bloodied weapon, just theories. Friends of the family described them as devastated, kind, lost in sorrow, but the media didn't care. Patsy was crucified as an overbearing mother. John was labeled distant. Burke, a 9-year-old, was interrogated, analyzed, picked apart by experts and journalists alike. One day, he saw a tabloid cover that said Burke killed JonBenet. He burst into tears in a grocery store. No child should carry that burden. Today, JonBenet would be almost 35 years old, but her memory remains frozen in time. A little girl in a tiara, smiling through headlines, soaked in tragedy. After nearly 3 decades of public silence, Burke Ramsey is finally telling his truth. He wants people to know. He loved his sister, he did not hurt her, and he too lost everything that night. But the world still demands answers. Who killed JonBenet Ramsey? Was it someone inside the house, or someone who slipped in unnoticed? Was it a failed kidnapping, or something darker? And why, after all these years, has no one been brought to justice? In Part 2 we'll explore how JonBenet's parents fought for justice, even as the world turned against them, the truth behind the public spectacle and police missteps, and a revolutionary breakthrough that might finally lead to her kill. Stay with us because the next chapter just might change everything you thought you knew.
Here is Part 2 of the rewritten JonBenet Ramsey story. Crafted for emotional impact, audience retention, and curiosity. It continues seamlessly from Part 1 and concludes with a compelling call to action. What if the only thing standing between justice and silence was a locked drawer holding forgotten DNA? JonBenet Ramsey's name still echoes through America's darkest unsolved cases. A 6-year-old beauty queen, taken from the world under horrifying circumstances, and for nearly 30 years, the truth has remained buried under speculation, missteps, and media madness. In Part 1, we followed the haunting events of that December morning, but now we uncover what happened after the cameras faded, and how one family's relentless pursuit for truth continues, even today. This is the story behind the story of broken trust, lost faith in justice, and a breakthrough that could still change everything. Before she became a symbol of tragedy, JonBenet was just a little girl who loved pink dresses, glitter, and playing with her brother. Her name, a unique blend of JonBenet and Patricia, told you just how much she meant to her parents. She was born into wealth and glamour. Her father, John Ramsey, was a tech executive. Her mother, Patsy, a former beauty queen. They moved to Boulder, Colorado into a 15-room mansion, a picture of suburban success. JonBenet thrived on stage, winning pageants like Little Miss Colorado, flashing smiles that melted hearts across the country. But behind the spotlight she was still just a child, attending kindergarten, playing in snow, living the fairy tale life, until the fairy tale ended. After JonBenet's death, the house became a war zone of media and mistrust. The investigation, instead of widening, narrowed too quickly. John Ramsey says police locked in on his family from day one, ignoring clues that pointed elsewhere. He believes this tunnel vision destroyed the case. The ransom notes, dismissed as a fake. The possible intruder evidence, overlooked. The DNA found on her clothing, ignored for years. The Boulder police were criticized nationally for mishandling the scene. Friends and neighbors walked through the home, contaminating evidence, and still the focus stayed on the parents and Burke. Even years later, many of the same officials still control the case, a fact that angers Jon Ramsey deeply. Why hasn't this case been reopened with modern forensics? Why are we still in the dark? Patsy Ramsey bore the brunt of public suspicion. She was accused of faking the ransom notes, of pushing JonBenet too hard in pageants, of staging a cover-up, but she never stopped fighting to clear her name and find her daughter's killer. In 2006, after a long battle with ovarian cancer, Patsy passed away without ever seeing justice. The weight of suspicion followed her to her grave. She died broken, misunderstood, accused, and her daughter's killer still free. Jon speaks of her with reverence, not just as a wife, but as a mother wronged by the very system meant to protect her. That same year, science caught up with the mystery. Advanced DNA testing revealed something stunning: male DNA on JonBenet's clothing that did not match any family member. The entire family was officially exonerated. The district attorney even issued a public apology, but the damage was already done. For 10 years, the media and public had painted the Ramseys as guilty. No apology could erase that pain, and still, the killer remained unidentified. In 2018, everything changed. Not for JonBenet, but for another long cold case. Using a revolutionary method called genetic genealogy, investigators identified the Golden State Killer decades after his crimes. They did it by uploading DNA to public databases like GDmatch and FamilyTree. From there, they mapped family trees, traced distant cousins, and finally, found their suspect. When Jon Ramsey heard about this, hope reignited. Could this finally solve JonBenet's case too? He reached out to experts. He visited labs. He spoke with C.C. Moore, the top forensic genetic genealogist in America. He even rallied public petitions, begging the Boulder police to hand over the remaining DNA. But the answer? No. The Boulder Police Department refused to release the DNA, blocking the one breakthrough that could finally name the killer. Despite nationwide pressure, despite petitions signed by tens of thousands, the evidence remained sealed. Jon Ramsey, now older and remarried, continues to speak out. He says he'll never stop fighting. He dreams of a day when an innocent little girl is remembered, not just for her tragic death, but for the justice she deserved. He says if he could speak to JonBenet today, he'd say, "I'm sorry, not for something I did, but for what I couldn't do. I couldn't protect you, but I never stopped loving you." Her makeup-clad pageant photos were splashed across covers. Talk shows debated her parents' body language. Every tear, every word, was examined for lies. It became a spectacle, not a search for justice. Was JonBenet exploited in pageant? Was her fame part of what brought her danger? Was the real killer watching as the nation turned inward? Theories spun out of control. Books, documentaries, and Reddit threads dissected every detail. And yet no new answers, just old wounds reopened. One man stood apart, Detective Lou Smith. Brought in independently, he believed from the beginning that the Ramsey family was innocent. He found signs of a possible intruder, a broken window in the basement, a footprint outside, and evidence that didn't align with any family member. He believed the garrote and stun gun marks were too calculated, too cruel for a child or a panicked parent. Lou Smith died before seeing justice, but his daughter Cindy Mara picked up where he left off, collecting DNA, analyzing files, and fighting for answers. She still believes the killer is out there, alive, unknown, and findable. Maybe it's because JonBenet's story has everything: a perfect child, a rich family, a sudden tragedy, suspicion, beauty, and silence. Or maybe it's because somewhere inside all of us, we want to believe that even the coldest cases can be solved. That truth matters. That justice can win, even if it's 30 years late. JonBenet Ramsey would be nearly 35 years. Instead, her image remains frozen in time. A child in a tiara, a name we whisper, a story we never stop telling. JonBenet wasn't just a victim, she was a daughter,
a sister, a soul, and her story deserves more than a mystery. It deserves an ending. With Burke Ramsey's voice finally heard, with John Ramsey still fighting, and with DNA science more powerful than ever, the truth may still come, but only if those holding the keys are willing to unlock the door. A tragic accident covered up, or something we've never even imagined. We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and join the conversation, because stories like this shouldn't be forgotten, and justice delayed doesn't have to be justice denied.